Welcome to day 2 of our senior soldier prep class on the Salvation Army History Personalities. Yesterday, we learned all about William and Catherine Booth and their vision and work as the founders of the Salvation Army. Today, we will be learning more about our inherited family and the life of Evangeline Booth. Evangeline was born the seventh of 8 children and the fourth daughter of William Booth and Catherine Mumford. She was born on December 25th of 1865 in South Hackney of the same year the Salvation Army was born. Her name comes from her mother, who had recently read Uncle Tom's Cabin and wanted to name her baby Eva, but her father didn't like the name, so he wrote Evelyn on the birth certificate. Years later, Evelyn will be persuaded by Francis Willard to adopt the name Evangeline as being more dignified. Evangeline didn't receive any formal education, but spent her adolescent years among the poor of London. At age 15, she was a sergeant selling the army paper, The War Cry, in the slums of East London. She was given a leadership position when she was 17, becoming commander of the army forces in Canada. At the very young age of 21, in 1887, she became the officer of the Corps in Marylebone, where there was very strong opposition to the Salvation Army. But wherever trouble threatened, General Booth's solution was invariably, "Send Eva." Tall, thin, with long autumn hair, she chose never to marry, even though she was seriously pursued by a Russian prince. Evangeline adopted 4 children. She was known for her athleticism in her younger days as a talented diver. Evangeline was appointed as field commissioner throughout Great Britain from 1888 to 91, courageously fighting riot crowds. When in 1896, an American breakaway group led by her brother Ballington Booth and his wife Maud attempted to pull American Salvationists away from the Salvation Army into a rival group called the Volunteers General of Booth America. Then sent Evangeline to New York, where she was appointed temporary territorial commander of the United States, then territorial commander of Canada, and in 1904 she returned as commander of the United States and held this position until 1934. After the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, she led a meeting and raised over $12,000 for relief work. In 1917, 250 Salvationists left for New York to help in the Great War in France. And in 1923, she officially adopted the United States as her homeland. As donations poured in, the American people gave $13 million to clear debts incurred by the Army through its provision of canteens, hostels, and restrooms. Through this, Booth was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal by the U.S. Army. Upon arriving in New York, Evangeline immediately began to address the extreme poverty she found among immigrants there. One of the main problems was hunger. She attacked this by establishing bread lines and programs to feed the children. The public response was to give when she held donation drives. Other service projects were providing emergency relief, aid to hospitals, and helping the elderly. Booth won over the support from the people. Under her leadership, the Salvation Army sent members to the front lines of the war in Europe, where they cared for the wounded, established canteens, and loaned money to soldiers. This aid was considered so important that it excused Salvation Army members from military duty so they could be free to continue their work. The country showed its appreciation for the Salvation Army after the war by donating $15 million during a special nationwide project to assist the organization. In 1927, Evangeline visited her brother Bramwell Booth to change the way that the Salvation Army appointed its general. Bramwell was not convinced and decided to do things the way his father always had. But in 1929, the First High Council decided to do things as she proposed. At 69, Evangeline Booth was elected general in 1934. She brought to the generalship a wealth of experience in many areas of the Army's work. She was a successful evangelist and had preaching, administrative, and teaching positions in the United Kingdom, Canada, and in the U.S. Evangeline was the first woman to hold the title of general. During her term, the Order of the Silver Star was extended from the U.S. to the whole Salvation Army world. She completed only one 5 year term before retiring at the age of 74, but for 5 years she led the Salvation Army's work in 80 countries. Having served the Salvation Army in three different nations during her long career, it seemed fitting that her last years were spent overseeing an organization that had grown to an international success with volunteers in more than 50 countries. Evangeline left Britain for her home in Hartsdale and spent the remaining years of her life in the land in which she had served for so many years. She lived in New York until her death in 1950 at the young age of 84. And that's the story of our dear sister Evangeline Booth. Hope you enjoyed your time with us today. Until next time, bye bye.